In a quiet corner of Chicago, far from the busy streets and towering skyscrapers, stood a small research lab. It wasn't anything special to look at, just a plain brick building surrounded by trees. But inside, something extraordinary was happening. Dr. Emily Carter, a dedicated scientist with a passion for understanding the human body, spent most of her days there. Her assistant, Ryan Scott, was always by her side, helping with experiments and sharing her curiosity about the mysteries of biology. On this particular morning, everything seemed normal. The two were working on a project studying how human cells regenerate, a process that had fascinated scientists for decades. They had collected tissue samples from volunteers and were analyzing them under microscopes, searching for patterns or anomalies. But as Emily stared at the glowing screen in front of her, something unusual caught her eye. One of the DNA strands they were examining didn't behave the way it should. Instead of staying stable, it changed, rewriting itself every few hours. At first, Emily thought it might be a mistake. She double-checked the equipment, recalibrated the machines, and ran the tests again. But no matter what she did, the results were the same. The DNA strand kept altering its structure, almost like it had a mind of its own. Ryan noticed her frown and leaned over to take a closer look. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with curiosity. "I don't know," Emily admitted, shaking her head. This isn't supposed to happen. DNA doesn't rewrite itself like this. Not naturally, anyway." Ryan scratched his chin, thinking hard. Could it be some kind of mutation? Maybe something caused by environmental factors. Emily hesitated. Maybe. But even mutations have limits. This is different. It's like the code is alive. She tapped her fingers nervously on the desk. Something about this discovery felt unsettling, though she couldn't quite put her finger on why. As the day went on, they dug deeper into the data. The more they studied the strange DNA strand, the stranger it became. Not only did it rewrite itself, but it also contained sequences that didn't match anything in the human genome or any known organism on Earth. Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications. If this wasn't a natural occurrence, then where had it come from? And what did it mean for humanity? By evening, the lab was silent except for the hum of the machines. Ryan broke the silence. "You think this could change everything we know about biology?" Emily nodded slowly. "It already has, but I'm not sure if that's a good thing." Neither of them could have guessed just how right she was. What started as a routine experiment was about to spiral into something far bigger and far more dangerous than either of them could imagine. As Emily turned off the lights and locked up the lab, she couldn't shake the feeling that they had opened a door they might not be able to close. The next morning, Emily and Ryan arrived at the lab early, still buzzing with questions about their discovery. They hadn't slept much the night before, their minds racing with possibilities. As they prepared to dive back into their research, there was a knock at the door. It was unexpected. Few people ever visited the lab without an appointment. When Emily opened the door, she found a tall man in his late 50s standing there. His hair was gray, and his face carried the weight of someone who had seen too much. He introduced himself as Dr. Nathan Brooks, a geneticist whose name was well known in scientific circles. "I heard about your findings," he said, his voice low and serious. "We need to talk." Emily hesitated but let him in. Something about his tone made her uneasy. Once inside, Nathan wasted no time getting to the point. "You don't understand what you've uncovered," he said, pacing the room. "This isn't just some random mutation. It's evidence of something far bigger and far more dangerous." Ryan frowned. "What do you mean?" Nathan stopped pacing and looked directly at them. "Human biology isn't natural. Not entirely. For years, I've been warning anyone who would listen that our DNA carries traces of tampering, signs that we were designed, not evolved. What you found is proof of that." Emily shook her head, struggling to process what he was saying. "That's impossible. If humans were engineered, Wouldn't we have noticed by now? Not if whoever did it wanted us to stay in the dark, Nathan replied. They left markers in our DNA, hidden so deeply that only advanced technology could uncover them. And now, it seems, those markers are waking up. Before Emily or Ryan could respond, strange things began happening around the lab. One of the technicians, Sarah, complained of a sharp pain in her chest. Another, Mark, started forgetting basic tasks, like how to use the equipment he'd been trained on for years. By the end of the day, several staff members reported feeling unwell, fatigue, headaches, and even hallucinations. Nathan watched silently as panic spread through the team. It's starting, he murmured. The changes in the DNA aren't just rewriting themselves. They're affecting the people carrying them. Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. What kind of changes? Are we sick? It's worse than that, Nathan said grimly. Your bodies are being rewritten. Not just your DNA, but your entire biology. Whoever designed us left instructions embedded in our genes, waiting for the right moment to activate. And now, it's happening. Ryan stepped forward, his face pale. How do we stop it? Nathan sighed heavily. I don't know if we can, but one thing is certain. You can't trust anyone outside this room. Governments, corporations, they'll want to control this, exploit it. You'll be pawns in a game you don't even understand. His words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. That night, as Emily locked up the lab, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. The world as they knew it was beginning to unravel, and they were caught right in the middle of it. Somewhere deep down, she wondered if they'd already gone too far to turn back. The days that followed were filled with fear and uncertainty. The strange symptoms among the lab staff grew worse, and no one seemed to know how to stop them. Sarah, one of the technicians, was the first to collapse. Her body shook violently as she lay on the floor, her eyes wide open but unseeing. Ryan rushed to help her, but there was nothing he could do. By the time paramedics arrived, she had slipped into a coma. Mark wasn't far behind. He started forgetting simple things at first. Names, dates, even how to use the coffee machine. But soon, his memory loss became more severe. One morning, he walked into the lab and stared blankly at everyone, unable to recognize his own coworkers. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice trembling. It was as if his mind had been erased. Emily watched all of this unfold with growing dread. She tried to stay calm for the sake of the team, but inside, she was terrified. Nathan's warnings echoed in her mind. Asterisk, your bodies are being rewritten, asterisk. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were dealing with something far beyond their understanding. Desperate for answers, Emily reached out to Dr. Laura Hayes, an immunologist known for her work on rare diseases. Laura agreed to visit the lab, though she sounded hesitant on the phone. "Tell no one I'm coming," she said firmly. "Not even your superiors." When Laura arrived, she wasted no time getting to work. She examined the 6 staff members, reviewed the data, and ran tests of her own. After hours of intense study, she finally spoke. "This isn't just a disease," she said, her voice low. "It's like your DNA is fighting against itself. Parts of it are breaking down while other parts are growing stronger, but not in a way that makes sense." "What does that mean?" Ryan asked, his face pale. "It means whoever, or whatever, designed this didn't intend for it to heal or improve you," Laura explained. "They wanted to change you, and those changes are happening faster than we can stop them." As if to prove her point, Ryan suddenly clutched his head and groaned. His vision blurred, and dark shapes flickered at the edges of his sight. "I see them," he muttered, his voice shaking. "They're here." "See who?" Emily demanded, rushing to his side. "The shadows," Ryan whispered. "They're talking to me." Laura grabbed a flashlight and shone it into Ryan's eyes, checking for signs of neurological damage. But his pupils responded normally, leaving her baffled. "He's hallucinating," she said. "But why? What's triggering these visions?" Before anyone could answer, The lights in the lab flickered and went out. For a moment, the room was plunged into darkness. Then, faint whispers filled the air, soft, indistinct murmurs that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Emily froze, her heart pounding. She wasn't the only one who heard it. Everyone in the lab looked around, wide-eyed and scared. "Get us out of here," Laura said sharply. "Now." They quickly gathered what supplies they could and left the lab, heading for an abandoned bunker outside the city that Nathan had suggested as a safe place. As they drove through the night, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Ryan's words. Asterisk, the shadows are talking to me. Asterisk, what did it mean? Were they truly alone in this, or was something, or someone, watching them? By the time they reached the bunker, exhaustion had set in, but there was no time to rest. Whatever was happening to them was spreading, and they needed answers before it was too late. The bunker was cold and damp, a far cry from the well-lit lab they had left behind. It wasn't much, a single room with concrete walls, a few cots, and a small generator to keep the lights on. But it would have to do. Emily, Ryan, Laura, and Nathan worked quickly to set up their equipment, using whatever tools they'd managed to bring along. The air felt heavy, as if the weight of what they were uncovering pressed down on all of them. Laura took charge, diving straight into the data they'd salvaged. She studied the mutated DNA under a portable microscope, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There's something here," she said after a while, her voice low but urgent. "These sequences, they're not random. They're arranged in patterns." "What kind of patterns?" Emily asked, leaning over her shoulder. "Not biological ones," Laura replied. "They look more like language or code." Nathan nodded grimly. "I've seen this before, in ancient texts, symbols embedded in carvings, paintings, even ruins. Whoever designed us didn't just leave instructions in our DNA. They left messages." Ryan, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Messages? From who? Aliens?" "It's possible," Nathan admitted. "Or maybe something older than aliens, something that existed before life on Earth began." Emily felt a chill run down her spine. The idea was almost too big to comprehend. If their biology had been engineered by an ancient otherworldly force, then humanity wasn't just a product of evolution, it was part of a plan. But what kind of plan? And why? As they continued analyzing the DNA, strange things kept happening. Ryan's hallucinations grew worse. He claimed the shadowy figures whispered louder now, urging him to do things he couldn't explain. One night, Emily woke to find him sitting in the corner of the bunker, muttering to himself. When she approached him, his eyes snapped open, glowing faintly in the dim light. "They know we're here," he said, his voice hollow. "They're coming." Laura noticed physical changes in him too. His skin seemed paler, almost translucent, and his veins pulsed faintly beneath the surface, as though something inside him was alive. She tried to take blood samples, but the syringe came back empty. No blood, no fluid, nothing. It was as if his body was rejecting its own humanity. Meanwhile, outside the bunker, things were getting stranger. Every so often, they heard noises, footsteps crunching on gravel, distant voices calling out names none of them recognized. When they ventured out to investigate, there was never anyone there, just empty fields stretching into darkness. One evening, as they huddled around a flickering lantern, Nathan shared another theory. "This isn't just about rewriting biology," he said. "It's preparation. Whatever is encoded in your DNA isn't meant to destroy you. It's meant to prepare you for something else. Something bigger." "Like what?" Emily demanded, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Nathan admitted. "But I think it has to do with those planetary alignments Laura mentioned earlier. The timing isn't random. Something is supposed to happen when the stars align." Laura frowned. "You think this is tied to some kind of cosmic event?" "It's possible," Nathan said. "And if we can't figure out how to stop it, we might not survive to see what comes next." The thought hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. They were running out of time, and the answers they needed seemed just out of reach. Somewhere deep down, Emily wondered if they were already too late. The tension in the bunker was unbearable. Each day felt like a step closer to something they couldn't control, and every discovery only deepened the mystery. Laura worked tirelessly, her hands steady despite the fear gnawing at her. She had spent hours decoding the strange patterns embedded in the DNA, and what she found chilled everyone to the bone. "These aren't just messages," she said one evening, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're instructions, detailed blueprints for transformation." "Transformation into what?" Emily asked, her face pale. "I don't know yet," Laura admitted. "But it's not human. Whatever this is, it's designed to overwrite our biology completely. We're not the end goal. We're just a starting point." Ryan, who had been sitting quietly in the corner, suddenly stood up. His movements were jerky, unnatural. "They're getting louder," he muttered, clutching his head. "They want me to do something." "Who?" Emily demanded, stepping toward him cautiously. "Who's talking to you?" "The shadows," Ryan replied, his eyes darting around the room as if searching for something only he could see. "They say it's time." "Time for what?" Nathan asked sharply, his tone firm but laced with unease. Ryan didn't answer. Instead, he stumbled toward the table where their equipment was set up. Before anyone could stop him, he grabbed a flash drive containing all their research data and shoved it into his pocket. "I have to go," he said, his voice hollow. "They told me to take it." "Take what?" Laura snapped, blocking his path. "You can't just leave with that. It's too dangerous." Ryan's expression shifted, his features twisting into something almost unrecognizable. His glowing eyes locked onto hers, and for a moment, he didn't look entirely human. "You don't understand," he growled. "This isn't about us anymore. It's bigger than that." Before anyone could react, he pushed past them and bolted out of the bunker, disappearing into the dark night. The group stood frozen, staring at the empty doorway. None of them knew whether to chase him or stay put. "He's compromised," Nathan said finally, breaking the silence. "Whatever those whispers are, they've taken hold of him. If we don't act fast, whatever's happening to him will spread to all of us." Emily sank onto one of the cots, her mind racing. "What do we do now?" "He has everything. Our research, the data, the DNA samples. We find allies," Laura suggested. "People who might believe us. Scientists, activists, anyone willing to listen. If we can expose this, maybe we can slow it down." It was a risky plan, but they didn't have many options left. Over the next few days, Emily and Laura reached out to trusted contacts through encrypted channels, sharing fragments of their findings without revealing too much. They knew they couldn't trust governments or corporations. They'd already seen evidence of shadowy figures watching them, but there were others fighting against conspiracies involving extraterrestrial life and hidden truths. One name kept coming up: Jack Monroe, a former soldier turned whistleblower who had spent years uncovering classified operations. He agreed to meet them, though he warned them to be careful. "If half of what you're saying is true," he told Emily over the phone, "then you're in more danger than you realize." When Jack arrived at the bunker, he brought weapons and supplies, along with a grim warning. "You're not the only ones looking into this," he said. "There are people, organizations, that want to control whatever's happening, and they won't hesitate to silence anyone who gets in their way." As they prepared to move forward, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Ryan was out there somewhere, carrying pieces of the puzzle they desperately needed. And the whispers, the ones only he could hear, were growing stronger. Whatever was coming, it was close. Too close. The group decided to split up. Emily and Jack would track down Ryan, while Laura and Nathan stayed behind to protect the bunker and continue analyzing the data. It wasn't an easy choice, but they knew they couldn't afford to lose the flash drive Ryan had taken, or the secrets it held. Emily and Jack drove through the night, following faint leads about Ryan's whereabouts. They traced his movements to an old warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The building was dark and abandoned, its windows boarded up, and its walls covered in graffiti. As they approached, Emily felt a knot tighten in her stomach. Something didn't feel right. "Stay close," Jack whispered, gripping a flashlight tightly. "We don't know what we're walking into." Inside, the air was thick with dust, and the floor creaked under their feet. They moved cautiously, scanning the shadows for any sign of movement. Then they heard it, a low, guttural voice coming from deeper inside the warehouse. It sounded like Ryan, but distorted, as if it wasn't entirely him anymore. "Ryan," Emily called out, her voice trembling. "Is that you?" There was no response, only the sound of footsteps echoing in the darkness. Jack signaled for Emily to stay back as he moved forward, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was Ryan, but not the Ryan they knew. His skin was pale and translucent, veins pulsing visibly beneath the surface. His eyes glowed faintly, and his face twisted into a grimace that looked almost alien. In his hand, he clutched the flash drive tightly, as if it were the most important thing in the world. "You shouldn't have come here," Ryan said, his voice uneven, layered with something unnatural. "They told me you'd try to stop them." "Stop who?" Emily asked, taking a step closer despite her fear. "What are you talking about, Ryan? This isn't you." "It's too late," Ryan replied, shaking his head. "You can't fight this. None of us can." Before Emily could respond, Jack stepped forward, raising his hands in a gesture of calm. "Listen to me, Ryan. Whatever's happening to you, it's not your fault. But you need to let us help you." For a moment, Ryan hesitated. His glowing eyes flickered, and his expression softened. Then, just as quickly, his face hardened again. "Help me," he spat. "You can't even save yourselves." With that, he turned and bolted toward the back of the warehouse. Jack cursed under his breath and chased after him. But Ryan was fast, faster than he should have been. By the time they reached the exit, he was gone, disappearing into the night like smoke. Back at the bunker, tensions were running high. Laura and Nathan had made progress decoding more of the DNA messages, but the revelations were far from comforting. The instructions embedded in the genetic code pointed to a specific location, an ancient artifact buried deep beneath the Nevada desert. According to the data, the artifact was tied to the planetary alignments Nathan had mentioned earlier. "This is it," Laura said, her voice heavy with both hope and dread. "If we can find this artifact, maybe we can stop whatever's happening." But finding it wouldn't be easy. The coordinates led to a restricted area patrolled by military forces, likely guarding the very thing they were searching for. Worse still, Emily and Jack returned empty-handed, unable to retrieve the flash drive or bring Ryan back. "We're running out of options," Emily admitted, slumping onto a cot. "If we don't act soon, whatever's controlling Ryan will spread to everyone." Jack placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "Then we focus on the artifact. If it's our best shot, we take it." As dawn broke over the horizon, the group prepared for one final mission. They didn't know what awaited them in the desert, but they knew one thing for certain. Failure wasn't an option. Somewhere out there, Ryan was still alive, or at least part of him was. And if they couldn't stop the transformation spreading through humanity, none of them would remain human for long. The journey to the Nevada desert was long and tense. The group traveled in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Emily stared out the window, watching barren landscapes roll by under a blazing sun. Jack drove steadily, his jaw clenched with determination. Laura and Nathan sat in the back seat, poring over maps and notes about the artifact's location. None of them spoke much. They didn't need to. The weight of what they were about to face hung heavy in the air. When they finally reached the restricted area, it was even more fortified than they had expected. Barbed wire fences stretched endlessly, guarded by soldiers armed with rifles. Surveillance towers loomed in the distance, their spotlights scanning the ground below. Getting past all of this undetected seemed impossible. "We'll have to move at night," Jack said quietly as they parked far enough away to avoid detection. "And we'll need to split up. 2 of us will create a distraction while the others sneak in." Emily nodded, though her stomach churned with nerves. "I'll go for the artifact," she said firmly. "This is my discovery. It has to be me." Jack hesitated but eventually agreed. "Fine. I'll go with you. Laura and Nathan, you handle the distraction." That night, under the cover of darkness, the plan went into motion. Laura and Nathan set off flares near one side of the perimeter, drawing the guards' attention. Gunshots rang out in the distance as alarms blared, lighting up the desert sky. Meanwhile, Emily and Jack slipped through a gap in the fence, moving quickly toward the coordinates marked on their map. The deeper they went, the stranger the landscape became. The ground was cracked and dry, littered with strange symbols carved into rocks that glowed faintly under the moonlight. It felt like they were walking into another world, one that existed just beyond the edges of reality. Finally, they'd reached the site, a massive stone structure half buried in the sand. Its surface was covered in intricate carvings that matched the patterns they'd seen in the DNA code. At its center was a pedestal holding the artifact, a smooth metallic sphere pulsing with an eerie blue light. "This is it," Emily whispered, reaching out cautiously. As soon as her fingers touched the sphere, a surge of energy coursed through her body. Flashes of images filled her mind, planetary alignments, shadowy figures, and waves of transformation sweeping across humanity. She gasped, stumbling back. "What happened?" Jack asked, steadying her. "It's alive," Emily stammered. "It's communicating with me, telling me how to use it." Before she could explain further, shouts echoed in the distance. The guards had discovered their breach and were closing in fast. Emily focused on the artifact, channeling the instructions flooding her mind. With trembling hands, she pressed her palm against the sphere and activated it. A low hum filled the air, growing louder and stronger. Waves of energy radiated outward, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Emily felt her skin tingle as if every cell in her body was being rewritten, but not destroyed. For the first time since the nightmare began, she felt hope. "Go," she shouted to Jack as the guards approached. "Get out of here." Jack hesitated, unwilling to leave her behind, but Emily pushed him away. "Trust me, you have to go." Reluctantly, he turned and ran, disappearing into the night just as the artifact unleashed its full power. A brilliant flash of light engulfed the area, followed by an explosion that sent shockwaves rippling across the desert. When the dust settled, the artifact was gone, and so was Emily. Back at the bunker, Laura and Nathan waited anxiously for news. Hours passed before Jack returned, battered but alive. He told them what had happened, his voice thick with emotion. "She did it," he said. "She stopped it." But as dawn broke over the horizon, none of them could shake the feeling that the battle wasn't truly over. Somewhere out there, Ryan still wandered, his fate unknown. And deep within the shadows, whispers lingered, hinting at battles yet to come. The days that followed were a blur of chaos and uncertainty. News of the explosion in the Nevada desert spread quickly, though official reports claimed it was nothing more than a military training accident. The truth, however, was far stranger. Across the globe, people began experiencing strange symptoms, seizures, headaches, and vivid dreams filled with shadowy figures and cryptic messages. It was as if humanity itself was fighting back against the alien influence embedded in its DNA. Jack, Laura, and Nathan worked tirelessly to piece together what had happened. Emily's sacrifice had clearly disrupted something massive, but they couldn't be sure how long the effects would last, or if they'd even succeeded in stopping the transformation entirely. The artifact's energy had rewritten parts of human biology, expelling the foreign signals that had been rewriting their genes. But remnants of the alien code still lingered, buried deep within the genetic structure of millions. Ryan remained missing, his fate unknown. Some speculated he had been consumed by the same force that had driven him mad. Others whispered darker theories, that he had become something else entirely, a bridge between humanity and whatever force had engineered them. Despite their efforts, the group couldn't find any trace of him. It was as if he had vanished without a trace. As weeks turned into months, life began to return to some semblance of normalcy. The hallucinations faded, and the physical changes reported by those affected slowed down. Governments issued vague statements about environmental factors, causing temporary health issues, but no one mentioned aliens or ancient artifacts. For most people, the event slipped into obscurity, dismissed as another unexplained phenomenon. But for Jack, Laura, and Nathan, there was no going back to normal. They knew the truth, and they knew the battle wasn't over. The whispers Ryan had described hadn't disappeared completely. Late at night, when the world was quiet, Jack swore he could hear faint murmurs in the corners of his mind. Laura noticed similar things, moments where her thoughts seemed to drift beyond her control. Even Nathan, who had spent decades studying these mysteries, admitted he felt different. One evening, as they sat around a small table in the bunker, reviewing what little data they had left, Nathan broke the silence. "We stopped the immediate threat," he said slowly, "but we didn't erase it. Whatever designed us, it's still out there, and it knows we're onto it." Laura nodded grimly. "Do you think it'll come back?" "Another alignment, another signal." "It's possible," Nathan replied. "But next time, we might not have an artifact to save us." Jack leaned forward, his expression resolute. "Then we prepare. We keep studying, keep looking for answers. If they come back, we need to be ready." They all agreed silently, knowing the road ahead would be long and dangerous. Somewhere out there, Ryan might still exist, a living reminder of what humanity could become if they failed again. And somewhere deeper still, the shadows waited, patient and watchful. As dawn broke over the horizon, Jack stepped outside the bunker, gazing at the rising sun. He thought of Emily, her bravery, and the cost of their victory. She had given everything to protect humanity, but she hadn't done it alone. Now it was up to them to carry the torch, to ensure her sacrifice wasn't in vain. The universe held secrets far greater than anyone could imagine, and humanity was only beginning to scratch the surface. But as long as people like Jack, Laura, and Nathan stood guard, there was hope. Hope that they could face whatever came next and survive.